How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another CCH podcast episode. And we have one amazing night in store for you. We're going to be talking with Mark from the Amphibian Foundation. I'm super excited to see all of the different topics we're going to get to tonight. And I'm really looking forward to diving in about their work and so much more. But I could go on and on explaining about how cool this guy is, all the work he's doing, but why don't we hear it from his mouth? Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring our attention to Mark from the Amphibian Foundation. So go ahead
Hello.
and let people know, I guess, who might not know somehow what it is and what you guys are doing.
What the Amphibian Foundation is and what we're doing.
That's right.
Okay. Well, our mission, I should start with, we're based in Atlanta. Our mission is to create lasting solutions for the amphibian extinction crisis. And I can answer this question at length if you'd like. I could tell you that we started in 2016 for the singular purpose of conserving the frosted flatwood salamander, which is a species at imminent risk of extinction, even currently. And so we formed just to start a captive assurance colony for that species. That was around the time when the recovery plan for that species was being developed, and and captive assurance was identified as a necessary strategy to combat the imminent extinction. And so the Amphibian Foundation was formed. We at that time had a reptile and amphibian summer camp that my wife had started called Critter Camp. It is now going into its 10th year. And so basically, we funded these first years of frosted flatwood salamander conservation with this Critter Camp. And so that has been primarily our model. We've expanded to incorporate many more species since then. We have about 30 staff doing all amazing things right now at the Amphibian Foundation, either directly working on the conservation of some of the nation's most imperiled species, or educating, because that's a super important part of our mission too, where we're raising an army of conservationists. We're focusing on the younger generations that they manage to still have their priorities straight. And when you tell younger learners that these are endangered species and what endangered means, they get it a lot more than most of the adults that we interact with, though there are some very passionate adults too. I mean, I hope that's not going on for too long, but we're focused on, conserving these species that are in imminent risk. So when we come in and the government has asked us to remove animals from the wild, that is a profound thing to do to a species, and that is a last resort. I really need to emphasize that if you're saying the only way to stop the extinction is to put them into a laboratory, that means that you've already failed in so many ways. It's really important to highlight that, because there are plenty of species that very proactively could be conserved before it even gets close to that kind of predicament. And we also focus on those types of conservation programs as well. So sorry if I was long-winded.
That's fantastic.
Oh, totally fine. You just got those, you got the flatwood salamanders to breed in captivity the whole cycle and whatnot, just within the last couple of years, correct?
That is correct. And so when we first started the Amphibian Foundation, we were focused on captive assurance, and according to the Amphibian Conservation Action Plan, which I would recommend anyone here look up, captive assurance, we were just trying to make sure that there was a genetic repository of these animals that were being safeguarded, because they're crashing in the wild so rapidly. And then over time, when we were learning more about their natural history and how to properly rear these things from egg or larvae, so we were going out and working with our partners who were collecting eggs from the wild. That's where the majority of our animals at the Amphibian Foundation are from salvaged eggs. So flatwood salamanders lay eggs in the upper margins of dry ponds. So that is a very peculiar strategy. They'll breed in ponds when they're dry. And so they lay their eggs in the upper margins called the ecotone. The eggs, and then they leave. The eggs just sit there and develop and wait for seasonal rains to flood the pond. And that's when they hatch. It's a very risky strategy because, especially when you're talking about the way climate's been shifting and rain becoming more less systematic and harder to predict, their strategy would work most of the time. But then lately, the last 10 or so years, 10, 20 years, their eggs are drying out in the field. The rains aren't coming, or the ponds have been flooded and they're not suitable for these animals. And so for a variety of reasons, it's been necessary to collect eggs from the wild, especially if they're not going to hatch at all. And we've become particularly good at rearing up healthy flatwood salamanders from these salvaged water-stressed eggs. And then, as you mentioned, a couple of years ago, we were able to successfully breed some of these animals and produce an F1 generation. And so that's what you're seeing right there.
Oh yeah, looks like we just passed that second anniversary.
Yeah. And so that was a really big deal. So, I started working on this species in basically February or maybe March of 2012. So almost exactly 10 years from when I started. And to have this produce these eggs, it was an amazing feeling because, it was a complete shock, and we have had our fingers crossed for a very long time. And it's, then these animals did not come with an instruction manual. There was no one to ask, and it was just figuring this out as we went. And nobody knows anything about flatwood salamanders, or at least very little. It's complete mystery. And so having that little bit of success was not only very encouraging, but it triggered the next step of the recovery plan, which is us exporting our recipe, for lack of a better word, and some animals to partner organizations. So as of last year, the Amphibian Foundation is no longer the only place on Earth with frosted flatwood salamanders. Now there are 4 additional organizations, and there are 2 or 3 more coming on in the next maybe 18 months. So it's very exciting, and we're just trying to there has not been a second breeding event yet, but we're trying to get everything in position to basically create a frosted flatwood salamander factory that can churn out thousands of larvae each year.
That's great. How did you go about kind of trying to puzzle out the proper conditions to keep them in? Like, it's convenient that they're actually a local species that you can go and observe the habitat as it should be. It's not like you're having to try and figure it out from something that got imported that's from a whole nother country or whatever, like soil sampling or temperature, water. Is this kind of data that was already existing, or did you go out and collect a bunch of new?
Well, you bring up a lot of great points. First thing that came to mind is that there's actually no suitable habitat for flatwood salamanders. That's the reason why they're disappearing. I mean, there are a couple of places that are working to restore habitat, but the fact that the main reason why the salamanders are crashing so hard is because their habitat is long gone. The longleaf pine habitat has been reduced to 3% of what it was historically, and those 3% are not being managed in a way, the majority of which are not being managed in a way that's suitable for flatwood salamanders. So they're in a very precarious predicament. I would say, we constructed 25 outdoor mesocosms. So these are experimental, experimentally manipulatable little microhabitats. They're about 6 feet in diameter. And we've recreated 25 little longleaf pine ecosystems, and each of these are filled with salamanders. That is our assurance colony. And so it's set up on a nature preserve right in Atlanta, where people can walk and actually see the mesocosms, and we have signage out there explaining what we're doing. And so because so much care went into them, and we can really make sure that they have water when they need, and that they're dry when they need to be dry, we thought that that would probably be the first place where we would have successful reproduction. And we've had gravid females and we've had spermatophores, but we've never detected eggs in there. We've bred other ambystoma in those mesocosms as well, but just not singulatum. And so we had our first success in the lab, where we set up what I called like an ecotonal rain chamber, where we focused on just the nesting area. We tried to recreate just the typical, what we thought was the typical nesting area, and tried to encourage them to want to lay eggs. We gave them all the plants that we know that they like to lay their eggs under in the wild. And so we tried to set up little microhabitats for them. And so it just took about 6 weeks in the rain chamber before we had eggs. And so it was a shock. It was right before Christmas where we first saw the first eggs that were laid, and they laid eggs for a few weeks. So they didn't lay them all at once, and they just took their time and put them all over the place. It was very exciting.
Talk about a Christmas miracle, right?
Yeah, for sure. My little boy came in with me, and we were in there before dawn. So we had our headlamps on in the salamander lab, and he's telling me he sees eggs, and I didn't believe him. I didn't believe he knew what eggs looked like. I should have believed him right away. But then we just saw those things, and he'd been there on the front lines with me. So, that was, a long time coming for him too. So it was really nice, right Christmas miracle.
There's no doubt that has to be the greatest success in the organization up to this point. I mean, that's a very incredible story for an animal that really needs help.
Yeah. It really is true. It's been really amazing to be a part of this, and that the flatwood salamander has led to this, some of the surrounding states to ask for our help with some other endangered species, and it feels so great to be of service to this cause and be able to provide a function that is vital to a lot of these conservation programs.